So today I'm making homemade ravioli with a ricotta and lemon filling. Okay, to start off, a super simple pasta dough recipe, which is just flour. I'm using about 400 grams here, and to the flour, I've got 4 whole eggs. So we'll bung that in, and then also put a bit of salt in there. Now, obviously, you could do this by your hand or in a food processor, but I'm using my good old trusty stand mixer here. So just bung it all in. We'll start it off on a low speed to get it combined, and then we'll turn up the speed, let it knead for a little bit. I just stopped it there for a minute because I wanted to explain. A lot of recipes when they call you to make pasta, they get you to make a well in the center of the flour and then use a fork and beat it, and then as it's coming together, you flick a little bit of flour in. Now, as you can see here, this is the exact same thing, except the machine's doing all the work. It just makes it much more easier. So I'm just going to keep it on with a low speed, about like that, and as it mixes, it's actually pulling some of the flour in as it goes. And then once it all comes together, we'll speed it up a little bit. The machine's been running for about 2 minutes, and now we're just going to scrape it all down, get it all off the hook, give it a bit of a move around, and we'll put the machine back down and keep it running on this low speed. So once you get to this point here, where it's kind of come together and you still have some loose pebbly bits at the bottom, you need to speed up your machine at this point. And what that'll do is it'll cause the dough to not get stuck on here. It'll actually flicker around. It'll actually pick up those crumbly bits and incorporate it into the dough so it all becomes one mass. So at this point, you want to scrape it down once more, just close it down, and we're going to speed it up, and it will flick around and bring everything into one dough ball. Once the dough balls come together, I've just turned it back off again after I've had it turned up. Now once it's come together, you need to slow your machine back down a little bit more, because otherwise it won't have that nice knead to it. So once it's come together, you close it back down again, and you just slow your machine down. Now on mine, I'm going to leave it at this pace, and we're going to let it knead here for 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll come back. It's been kneading away there for a couple of minutes, and it's looking just fine. So, when I get the ball off the stand mixer, I'll move that out of the way because it's done its job. As you can see here, a nice bit of pasta dough. Obviously, all eggs are going to vary on size and all that sort of stuff, so I used on the bigger side of the eggs. If it needs a little bit more water, you just add like a tablespoon of water at a time to the stand mixer as it's coming together. But this one's looking just fine. I didn't have to add any water to it. Simple enough. Back in the stand mixer bowl, a little bit of oil. I'll coat this around in the oil. And I'm going to get some plastic out. Put this on the plastic, and I'm going to wrap it up. So once you got it wrapped up, we'll let it rest for about an hour while we get the filling prepared. Okay, we're going to make a simple ricotta filling. So in my little food processor here, I've got the ricotta. As always, the correct amounts of ingredients are going to be on the website, traditionalbutnot.com. So to the ricotta, I'm going to add some roughly chopped basil and the zest of a lemon. We'll bung all that in. We'll put some salt in there. And now I've also got the juice of the lemon, but I don't want to add too much liquid to this filling. So we're going to start off with just a splash. Then we'll get the top on, and we're going to mix this until we have a nice consistency. You're just going to add the lemon juice gradually, and you don't want to add too much to it at one time, because you don't want the filling to become too fluid. After you've mixed it for a little bit there, you want to stop it. You want to scrape the sides down. Make sure everything's mixing in nice and good. Put the top back on. Keep on mixing. As you can see, got a nice thick consistency, and I actually like the little chunks of basil in there. It's got a slight tinge of green to it from the basil, and I just want to taste it to make sure it's all right. That is pretty damn good. In my opinion, it's enough salt. The lemon's coming through very nicely, and the basil. I'm going to get this out of here, and we're going to put it into a piping bag, and then we're going to set it in the fridge until we need it. To roll out the dough, it's quite simple. You just want to take obviously not all of the dough, just a piece of it, and you want to flatten it out a little bit with your fingers into a nice rectangular shape, and a little bit of flour on both sides. Now, you want to have your pasta roller attachment on your stand mixer. You could also use a hand crank one. Now, the widest setting on my pasta roller is 0. So I found on the first pass through with a dough like this, I want to have the machine as fast as it would actually go, and then it feeds it through a lot better. So we'll feed it through. We'll feed it through maybe 2 or 3 times, and we'll turn it once, feed it through the other way, and one more for good luck. Now we can turn the machine off, and we want to fold this in to the center because we want a nice wide piece of dough. And in the end, once we finish rolling it out, you want it the same width as your pasta roller. So I've got about 1.5 centimeter gap on each side. So there is a bit of a room for this to actually get wider. As we feed it through, it will get wider as we go down in the numbers. So we'll just push it together, a bit more flour on the outside, and we want to push this dough down and make it nice and flat again. Now it's still on the whitest setting. I'm going to start feeding it through again. So once you've fed it through the first time, you can slow the machine down and you can pass it through a couple more times in this wide setting, just like that. Now, if your dough is too sticky, you can put a little bit of flour on the outside, but try not to put too much. Just enough for it not to stick, which mine's got plenty. So now I've just turned it down one number and we're going to start feeding it through. Each time we pass it through, we'll go down a number. Now I'm going to keep feeding this through, and once we get to the desired thickness, we'll come back. Now the thickness I like for ravioli is number 8 on my pasta roller. You want it very thin because you will be putting one on top of the other on the final product. So you want it a little bit thinner than you think. You can turn the machine off, and now we want to cut this in two. So we just want to get it laid out and then get roughly the center of your dough, which you can make a little push down there, and then just with the bench scraper, we'll cut it in half. We'll also drop the bench scraper on the floor because that's always handy. It's much easier with a bigger table. So I'm going to get this off of the table and then we'll carry on with the next step. Okay, once you got your dough laid out in front of you, now I'm going to be using this cup as my guide to how big the ravioli is going to be. Now this is 6.5 centimeters wide. Obviously you can make them as big or as small as you like, but for the filling, it's quite a liquid filling, so you don't want too big of a dough on this one. You don't want to cut it, you just want to make a little indent, and you just want to go down. So when you go on, we're going to pipe the filling in a minute. We have a rough guide on where to actually pipe the filling. So now it's simple enough. You just want to go ahead and put a nice little dollop of filling in the middle of each of the circles. Obviously you don't need a piping bag to do this. You could use a spoon, but this filling is quite runny. It's just easy to pipe it in there. Obviously try not to overfill it. Once you've got them all piped out, it's best to keep that filling in the fridge so it keeps as firm as possible. The next step is you want to pick this up and you want to lay it exactly on top. You don't want to fold this piece over on top because it won't fit properly. You just want to get it, start at one end and just slowly drape it down as even as you can over all of the ravioli. Now you get your little cut back again, a little bit of flour on the outside, and you put it in the middle and you cut it. And now you want to, this is where you actually want to cut them out. Okay, and then you can go through, you can cut them all out. As you do this, you probably go through and you do them all at one time. But because I'm showing you how to finish one off, we'll go ahead and we'll get this one out. When you want to seal it, you just start on one end and you want to push around the filling, just like that. And you will get a big air bubble on the end. So my trick is just to get a knife and as close to the edge of the ravioli, you just want to poke a little hole in it. And then you want to get all the air out as you come around. You push all the air out of that hole. Make everything nice and tied up in against that. And then once all the air's out, you just want to push down where you've made that hole. Make sure it's sealed again. And then I like to go around and just push down again. Make sure everything's nice and tight and there's no air bubbles in there. Just like that. Okay, now with your handy little bench scraper, just a little bit of flour on that. And then you can go ahead and scoop that up on your bench scraper. Then, as you can see here, I've already made a fair few. Then you can just slide that off onto a well-floured board or wherever you're going to keep them. At this point, I would tend to use a lot of flour on the bottom. This flour that will get stuck will actually wash off when we start cooking them. I'm going to go through and knock out the rest of them. And then once we've done that, we'll come back and we'll start cooking. I've got some salted water up to a boil here. And I've also got a pan with some butter in it that I've got on the heat toward the back there. So I'm going to put the ravioli in all at one time, and we're going to let them cook for 1 minute in this boiling water. Once the minute's up, you want to get them out the water, into the pan, and you want to get a little crispiness on the bottom side. As soon as you've got a little colour and crispiness on the bottom, you're ready to plate. Favourite time of the day, it's time to eat. As I said before, the crispiness on the bottom is optional, but highly recommended. It makes them just that little bit more special. There really is nothing quite like homemade pasta. And with this nice lemony filling, and with the basil popping through, it's just really damn good.